Are you fed up with the insanity of net zero and the climate change agenda, and that you are the carbon that they want to reduce? Well, in this video, we're going to be looking at how we can legally prevent the undermining of our freedoms and legally prevent the reduction and disappearance of our energy supply.
Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
Businesses need a platform that allows people to access and manage their office workstation from anywhere and anytime. WebConnect does just that. Our browser-based desktop platform enables you to seamlessly migrate your office into a private cloud, giving you total control of your desktop, files, and important data. It's encrypted end-to-end connection, making it totally secure and ensuring peace of mind for users and administrators alike. Put WebConnect to the test and transform the way you work remotely.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I am with Chris Coverdale and Steve Milloy, two fabulous repeat guests, but together for the first time ever. And before I introduce them, please subscribe, follow me on Twitter, CryptoRichYT, join my official Telegram announcements channel. And if you're watching this on YouTube, shame on you. Shame on you. Come to bit.ly/CryptoRich3Speak, which is censorship resistant, all about freedom of speech, and you get to earn crypto, and also bit.ly/CryptoRichOdySEE. Okay, Chris, thank you so much for making yourself available again. And Steve, thank you so much for making yourselves available again. Do you want to say very briefly, in a nutshell, what it is you guys do? Who'd like to go first?
Chris, you go first.
Okay, very briefly, I'm a anti-war campaigner. I used to be a management consultant running my own businesses. And recently I have been engaged in lawful tax rebellion through the process of taxation trusts.
Yes. Steve?
I have worked on environmental issues for 30 years. Last 25, I got to say, has been mostly climate. I spent a lot of time on Twitter. My website is junkscience.com. You can find me on Twitter or X at junkscience. I have a strong libertarian streak, but more in terms of traditional libertarian sort of small government, individual liberty, peace, stuff like that. I'm, definitely, the drugs not so much, but standard stuff.
Standard stuff. Okay.
That's what separates me from U.S. libertarians. U.S. libertarians are only into drugs, and they see libertarianism as a way to,
whatever. Okay. Well, we're gonna move on to net zero and the whole climate change agenda, and also the UK energy bill, because Chris, you and I have done videos before about how we can legally not pay tax.
Yep.
As a protest against war, but also as a protest of different aspects of the Great Reset, including the climate change agenda and net zero. Now, for people that are watching and that have bought into the whole climate change agenda that we have to reduce our carbon dioxide, otherwise we're all going to die. Steve, do you want to, we're going to die anyway, right?
Right.
Steve, do you want to say a little bit, like, what are the criticisms of net zero? What are the main criticisms?
Well, I'm going to start out with, all this notion that emissions are going to destroy the planet is a hoax. The notion that emissions are warming the planet is a hoax. This notion that we're going to, abandon fossil fuels and get to zero emissions on any time scale is a hoax. Our lives are entirely dependent on fossil fuels. You can't do anything without them. You can't build a solar panel or a wind turbine or do anything without fossil fuels. Fossil fuels have taken us from less than 1 billion people to more than 8 billion people living wealthier, healthier, freer lives than ever before. And so net zero is just this nonsensical concept that stupid people have glommed onto and are trying to destroy our economy and capture control of our lives with. How's that?
Okay, well, I agree with you. Right. After looking into it myself and looking into things like Milankovitch cycles and the magnetosphere and the sun and cosmic radiation and tectonic plates and the ICTZ and the Pacific decadal
Yeah,
oscillation, all that
yeah.
stuff.
Well, you
Talked
should
about.
check out. I've got a link to this on my Twitter feed I put up last night. The Norwegian Statistics Bureau, which is the official government statistics bureau from Norway, they have gone climate skeptic, and they just take down the entire climate hoax in a wonderful new report, very easy to read. I've highlighted it on my Twitter feed, but so it's not just me. Other people are catching on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Chris, any questions about the climate change agenda? Because I actually haven't checked out. Because you might actually be, a big fan of Just Stop Oil.
No, you have me wrong there, Rich. No, I'm basically focused on trying to end the criminal offences that are going on right now and remove the power from the elite, if you like, and transfer it to local communities everywhere.
There you go.
So that we can do what we know to be the right thing.
Right.
So,
Okay. But what about the argument that, the carbon actually isn't, I'm not even going to go there, right? But here's something that I'm going to say that I think we would all agree on, right? So the Europeans have waged war, have engaged in imperialism through war.
yep.
And people could argue that's what happened with the Iraq war and stuff, and they've done it through proxies as well. For a long tradition of enslaving other people, committing acts of genocide, telling them how they should live their lives, converting them to Christianity by the sword, putting them in concentration camps as the British did in Kenya in the 1950s, shipping them from one part of the world to another to work on plantations and stealing resources. And so they've done it militarily and by direct occupation, and they've also done it economically. And they're doing it economically, like France has, what it's been doing in its African colonies. So France was paying, I think, less than $2 a kilo for uranium from Niger. And the market price for uranium, when I last looked a couple of months ago, was about $160 a kilo. It's brutal, isn't it, Steve? And what they do it through a puppet government. They install a puppet government.
Yeah.
And okay, we'll pay you $2. You can have a lot of backhanders. They then use that uranium to generate nuclear power, and they sell it at a markup to their own population and then to other European nations. So they're raking in loads of money that way by strip mining African colonies, their former colonies, of their resources. So that's one way, right? And then I would also consider how the European Union waged imperialism within itself through the use of the euro, where Germany and Northern Europe did really, really well, while Greece and Southern Europe have really, really suffered since the implementation of the euro. So that sort of fiscal imperialism. And then I consider the climate change agenda as a form of environmental imperialism. That the European Union, the continent that doesn't have any appreciable hydrocarbons, is going to tell the rest of the world, no hydrocarbons for you. No development for you in Tanzania. No development for you in Burundi. No development for you in Bangladesh. No, you have to cut your carbon dioxide emissions. Any comments about that? Any objections?
No, I'm on board with you. I think all that is true, and all that needs to be discussed more.
Yeah.
It's the long traditional imperialistic process that we've been at for hundreds of years, quite honestly.
Yeah. Yes, and I should tug my forelock as a subject of the British Empire, that the British came and told us what was good for us, and here they are, them and the other European elites still doing that. This is for your own benefit. This is for your own benefit. Okay, and by the way, I have invited several of these organizations like Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion and Christians for Climate Change. And Steve, you said to me they'd never come on, and they haven't. They just haven't. They won't engage in debate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they have talking points. You're lucky if they can memorize their talking points. You can't just debate talking points. I mean, they've got their talking point. That's it. It's not a debate.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, by the way, if anybody's connected to Extinction Rebellion or Just Stop Oil or any of those similar, like, contact me via Twitter or something, and I'd love to have them on my channel to have a civil conversation. Because hey, I'm willing to learn. Maybe I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in terms of net zero, because I also see it as part of the Great Reset, where WEF and Davos and their partner organizations are out to create this fabulous system where we will own nothing. They will eat steak. We will eat bugs. They get to fly around, and apparently we're going to be happier this way, allegedly. And part of it is net zero, and the whole climate change agenda. And I'm not sure if it's been signed into law, but one of the things that this fake Tory government, this WEF government, have put into place is the energy bill, which has a few provisions in it. I don't know, Steve, if you've heard about it or anything, right? But here are some of the provisions. We have to have smart meters installed. If I object to having a smart meter installed in my home because I don't have a smart meter, then the government or whoever it is, the installers, can keep pushing it, and then they have the right to force entry into my home. I could be subjected to a 12-month prison sentence or a £15,000 fine for refusing to have a smart meter. So that whole thing about that maxim that was it the English maxim that my home is my castle, which is a legal maxim, forget about that. No, they have the right to come in, violate my property, and then I could be done for 15 months. And actually, that's a higher tariff for I think common assault. You can do 6 months for that, right? But for refusing a smart meter, then also there's a drive for people to install heat pumps. I don't know what the penalty is for refusing it, but heat pumps, I understand, are completely ineffective and inefficient. They never generate enough heat, but they want to stop us using hydrocarbons. They don't want us to be warm. They've made it illegal, or they've changed the air regulations, the clean air regulations, so you can't have a wood burner. They don't want us to be warm in any way whatsoever. Now, the smart meter is even worse because it allows for outside agents to manage and control the flow of electricity into people's homes. And then also the Minister of Energy or whoever, right, can change the requirements, the energy requirements, by the stroke of a pen without going to Parliament or anything. They can just decide, we're going to make it tighter and stricter. Then the energy certificates that a home has, they can also change the requirements for the energy certificates. So it has to be even more environmentally friendly, and then you can't sell it or you can't rent it out. Yep. So it's a way of slowly depriving people of their energetic freedom, and then also depriving them of their property with these incredibly expensive fines. I think this happens every time I record with Chris, Steve, is that his internet goes off.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. So, Steve, anything you want to say about? He'll come back in a moment.
Yeah. So I follow what's going on in the UK, and I tweet about it an awful lot. And the only thing I agree with you that Tory government is pretty embarrassing. The only thing that's worse, I think, would be Labour, because they would make it twice as bad. But I'm just shocked. I kind of look at the UK as sort of the cradle of libertarian ideas and freedom, right? We're a long way from Magna Carta, but that's kind of where I think it started, the Western heritage of freedom, and this green movement is just eating that alive.
Yeah.
I wrote a book about 14 years ago it's called Green Hell, and it's all about this. Environmentalism is it's camouflage for these leftists to take control of your lives and tell you what to do.
Yep.
That is what is happening right now, and it's happening faster where you are than where I am. I think you're spot on with the smart meters. They tried to do it very subtly in the U.S. They would just come to your home and change your meter out and go, oh, it's because it's much better. Well, I caught the guy on my property doing it. I told him to get off. So I still have my ancient meter. It's not a smart meter. Smart meters are just ways that the government can control how much electricity you use. They sort of dazzle you with like, oh, well, you can monitor your electricity usage. Well, it's really for them monitor your electricity usage. And then when you combine it with smart appliances, well, pretty soon they can, the government will talk to your appliances and tell them when they can work, when they can't work, or how much they can work. With electric cars, they'll be able to talk to your car, turn it on, turn it off, whatever. And it's this agenda of control. And it's not paranoia. This is actually true.
Yep.
This is happening in America and around the world with these smart meters, and people don't want them, and people are starting to revolt.
Yep. And just what you said, the first point about Britain's legal, lawful tradition, we actually have a Bill of Rights, the 1689 Bill of Rights, and then there's the Bill of Rights, the Act of Settlement, and the Coronation Act, which are constitutional acts and cannot be changed by Parliament because they give Parliament its powers. At least that's my understanding of it. And one of those is that the three of them combined say that Parliament has to institute laws that are to our benefit. They're there to represent us.
Yeah.
And the Tories never came in on the, oh, we're going to give you CBDCs. They're also developing those. They never came in, oh, we're going to, vote for us and we're going to fine you £15,000 if you don't have a smart meter involved. But I do agree with you. Labour are going to be much worse, much worse, because the Tory MPs do have about 100 MPs who are libertarian-ish because they voted against the vaccine mandates.
Mm-hmm.
But Labour doesn't have that at all.
No.
I think eight Labour MPs voted against the vaccine mandates.
Yeah. I see Chris is back. Right.
Chris is back.
Yeah,
you, Chris.
Sorry about that. Of old, I get cut off when anything gets a bit desperate, a bit to the point, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Okay. So I think where I'd like you to come in here, Chris, is say a little bit about tax rebellions.
Right. Okay.
And
relevant.
They've been done. And
yeah, basically, I discovered some 20 years ago now, in 2003, that it's a criminal offence to wage a war and to commit war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. And more importantly, it's a criminal offence to pay tax, which is used to wage a war. And this applies in 188 nations, including America. They signed up to the international convention called the Convention for the Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism. And the definition of terrorism is the use of firearms or explosives endangering life for a political cause. So when I discovered this, I realized that every time I pay tax, I'm contributing to warfare and the planning of wars and the mass murder of men, women, and children overseas. And now that we have a crime of genocide, whenever anyone commits genocide that is funded with my money, I'm committing a criminal offence as well as them. I also discovered that this applies, for instance, to medical genocides just as much as it does to military genocides. So I started to stop paying tax. I refused to pay tax in 2003 when I discovered this. And I've not been paying council tax since then, or any taxes that I have power over. So I then discovered, unfortunately, they then sent me to prison on 3 occasions for not paying my taxes, even though I do it for an entirely lawful duty not to pay tax when the government uses the money for a criminal purpose. So I thought, right, I've got to find a different way around this. And one of the ways that I've realized is that all the very rich people in this country and most overseas, they put most of their income into tax havens around the world, and they avoid tax in every way they can. So I thought, right, well, let's use the same system for us to avoid tax, but do it totally lawfully. So I've been refusing to pay tax lawfully by putting the money into a trust, a taxation trust, where the government cannot get hold of the money until they meet the conditions that I've put into the trust. And so it's a conditional, revocable, discretionary trust.
Now, hold on there, Chris.
Yep.
Steve, anything you want to ask so far?
That works.
Yeah. That's the nice thing about it, Steve.
Well, you see, it in the U.S. I don't know if you guys have this in the U.K. The withholding, like most people will get paychecks every 2 weeks,
Yep.
and the government automatically takes their cut out. And at the end of the year, April 15th, we resolve whether they took out too much or not enough. But for most people, the government just gets the money right away. Now I'm self-employed, so that doesn't happen to me.
Yeah.
But
we will come to that, to salaried employees, right?
Yeah.
But just want to check, Chris, this trust process that you're going to describe, and it's very, very simple. Very, very simple. It's like just had to fill in 4 bits on a form or whatever, right? Which you can download off Chris's website. Does it also apply in the United States?
Yes. I mean, the point is that the US has the same common law approach. They also have signed up to, as I said, the Convention for the Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism. And so this gives everybody in the US, the UK, and certainly all the Commonwealth countries and others who operate to common law, and every nation that has signed up to the International Convention for the Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism
is this a treaty?
Can take part in this.
Is this an international treaty?
Yep. And it was brought into American law with a terrorism legislation, Terrorism Act, I think. I'm not quite sure which one it is in America.
Okay.
I certainly know it in detail in this country. And it applies in there are now 188 nations that have ratified that convention. That's the second biggest number of nations throughout the world to ratify an international treaty. The only bigger one is 195 nations who have ratified the UN Charter. So every nation where it is ratified now has the duty not to transfer money to anybody who's going to use it, whether it's a government, an agency, or whatever, for purposes of terrorism, the use of firearms or explosives endangering or taking life. And we recently in the UK, for instance, had the Supreme Court say, yes, this applies to the military and quasi-military activities of the British government. So it works. I mean, that's the nice thing about it. They set up these laws to help them, and now we're using the same laws to help us.
Great, that's how it should be, because the law should be about helping us. Okay, so back to the trust thing, right? So you set up this trust. So you so say how it works. Say a bit more about that. Please carry on.
Yeah, basically, trusts are very simple. What you have to do is you can put money in trust, just as the rich do, and everybody who makes a will is putting money in trust for their beneficiaries after they've died. And their executors will implement the wishes that you have written into your will. So that's a good example. Now we can do exactly the same. It's called a living will in this country. So you don't have to die in order to implement it, although they're doing their best to get us dead. So basically what's happening is that what happens is that you just literally fill in the documentation, which I've got there. It's a 4-page document, which is a declaration of sovereignty and a deed of discretionary, revocable, conditional trust, and a withdrawal of consent to mandatory taxation. And so it does 3 things all at once. And you fill it in and say, okay, I'm due to pay perhaps $20,000 or £10,000 this year in tax. So you fill that figure in and you say, I'm happy to pay that money, but only on condition that you meet my conditions, which are that basically you use the money for lawful purposes only and never to engage in criminal offenses. There are a number of detailed conditions written in that specify that in detail. And in particular, you have to meet, I will only pay money to a government if they abide by the treaties agreed with the rest of the world, such as the UN Charter, and more importantly, which hardly anybody's ever heard of, is the UN Declaration on Principles of International Law, which was signed in 1970 and ratified by just about every nation, but none of them seem to have heard of it. So it's very clear in these laws that this is a criminal offence. And more recently, in most countries, but not in America, we have signed the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. The UN has been trying for 70 years to set up an external law enforcement authority which can hold our leaders to account in court for crimes of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide, and importantly for all taxpayers, for crimes of complicity in or conduct ancillary to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. So what I discovered was that if you hand money to a government and it uses it to kill, particularly in Britain, to kill one or more persons because they are members of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, they are committing genocide by doing that, because you're killing them because of who they are, not what they've done. And you, as a taxpayer, are committing a crime of conduct ancillary to genocide. And you can get I could get, if I do that, I could get the same punishment if I committed that crime and was convicted of it as would Tony Blair or Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak, because they are committing these crimes all the time. So that's the underpinning for the lawful tax rebellion. So what you actually do is...
Chris, hold on a second. Excuse me. So right. So by me paying tax, I'm contributing towards acts of genocide and also towards terrorism. And I am, if found guilty of violating these statutes, I could be sent down for 30 years.
Yes, correct.
By paying tax, I could be liable for a 30-year prison sentence, and that's one of the conditions in the trust forms that prove to me that I'm not liable. But also by asking for tax, that they are committing a criminal offense because they're raising money for acts of terror and acts of genocide. So the IRS in the United States and the HMRC in the UK are breaking the law by asking for money this way. And I want to make sure that, because we've done the anti-war stuff, right? And people should absolutely, if they're standing for peace, use this for that, right? But also, it can also be used as a protest against climate change.
Yes, I think the important bit is to remember that it's not actually a criminal offence in Britain to give money for purposes of climate change.
Sure.
But what we have to do,
conditions.
You can build it in, providing that you have the condition that you may not at any time use some of the money for purposes of genocide or terrorism or war.
Yep.
So providing you have that in, you can also add in conditions in relation to net zero or local traffic networks and neighborhoods and all the other things that are being brought in relation to this climate change mania, which is going on for the last.
So Chris, your money goes into the trust, and whatever money you think you owe on tax, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, and your trust doesn't pay the government unless the government meets your conditions.
Correct.
And so the fact that you have put it in a trust is your defense against not getting arrested for tax evasion. Is that what you're saying?
Because you have paid it. If they meet your conditions, you have paid your taxes.
Okay.
And that's the important thing. And because the condition is all about upholding and enforcing the law, which is what governments are supposed to do anyway, you're in a very good position to withhold it and say, no, I refuse to take part in genocide or warfare or anything else. And it is a criminal offense for me to do so. And as Rich says, it is a criminal offense for you to ask me for the money.
Prove that it isn't.
Exactly.
Conditions. Prove that it isn't, and then you can have the money. And then a couple of things that I thought. So the LTNs and the ULEZ is a violation of the Act of Union, because there's an article in there which says that we have the right of free passage.
Yes.
And they can't hinder that. Then also the Bill of Rights, 1689 Bill of Rights, is that the government has to make laws that protect our properties. They have no right over our properties.
Absolutely right. And that's really why in the Declaration and Deed, we start off with a declaration of sovereignty. The important bit is that we as individuals are sovereign human beings, and it's not the government that is sovereign, or Parliament, or Congress, or the monarch in this country. It is us as human beings. And we need to start off with that statement. I'm in charge of my decisions about life, not you.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think you'd object to that, Steve, would you?
Absolutely not. I'm just kind of curious how it's actually going to work out, though.
Well, perhaps I'll go through that. And then...
Well, we will get to that, because I just want to say that it also applies as payments to, so when it applies to all forms of money that go to the government, so LTL fines, speeding tickets, parking tickets, bus lane violations, the BBC license fee, income tax, local tax, inheritance tax, capital gains tax, court fines, any and all payments that go to the government. But it also works for payments to utility bills, so your water, your gas, your electricity. So Chris, please explain that.
So basically, yes, first of all, in this country, not only when we get a utility bill, it has VAT attached to it. And that is a tax, value-added tax. Mm-hmm. And we know that at least will be passed by the energy company to the government. So that's a criminal offence by both me in paying it, them for asking it, and then for paying it, then collecting it, and then a third offence for them paying it over to the government. So it's very important to say, no, I'm not going to pay it. Now, not only is it that 5%, but when the money goes, if you pay your electricity bill, it goes to these people, and as in America, they withhold PAYE from their employees' salaries, and they send that to the government. And same with what we call national insurance, which is another fraud, but that's a different issue. So there's a lot of money that incorporated in your bill, which you know for certain will be passed on to the government. And you have a legal duty, and it started in 1946 with the Nuremberg War Crimes Tribunals, when Germany's leaders were convicted of crimes, war crimes, and crimes against peace and humanity. And a lot of them said, well, look, I've just been obeying government orders. You know, they ordered me to do this and that and pay tax. And so anyway, they were prosecuted, and the same law applies everywhere, actually, universally. It does in America and every other nation, really. It's a universal crime to contribute to warfare and mass murder and genocide. Mm. So there's a lot of underpinning of this that makes any transfers of money, if you know that any of it will at any stage end up with the government, a criminal offence.
Okay, but couldn't a utility company, if we did this with a utility company, say, okay, well, we're not going to supply you with that service?
Well, they can try. But the important thing is to say, look, this is a criminal offence. Now, you've asked me for this money. I know now, under law in this country, particularly in Section 19 of the Terrorism Act, there is a law which says if you know that somebody else is committing a criminal offence under Sections 15 to 18 of the Terrorism Act, you must report that to the police. And if you don't, you commit a criminal offence which could put you in prison for 6 months. Now, that's the first time where there's been a negative law of not doing something is a criminal offence. Mm. It's most extraordinary, but that is Section 19 of the Terrorism Act. So you have to, in a sense, force your energy company or your council or your employer, whoever it is, to say, no, you must take this money and put it into trust for your employees, if it is withholding tax or PAYE and national insurance in this country. And if the government hasn't met your conditions by the end of the financial year, you give the money to the secondary beneficiary. And the secondary beneficiary is you.
what if the government says that we're not committing genocide or we're not breaking the law? We think you owe us the money.
Well, they would try that, but you have to have evidence of them committing genocide. Now,
Okay, so this has to go to court.
well, it hasn't yet. They don't want to take it to court because they're going to lose. This is the funny thing about it. But the point is that all of these issues are written, the definition of terrorism and how the government is breaking it, the definitions under the Terrorism Act, the International Criminal Court Act, the international statutes and so on. It's all written into the Declaration and Deed. So it's all there for you to understand and for the beneficiaries of your trust to understand that unless they meet those conditions, they will not get your money.
So are you doing this right now?
Yeah, I've been doing it since 2017, I think was the first year.
And they haven't put you in jail yet?
Not since then, no.
Not
they put me in jail before. It was because I hadn't found out about this, I hadn't thought about it, that now they can't because I paid the money. I put it in trust. It's all there,
Chris,
every year.
You told me, so this is for the council tax, which is the local government municipal tax, right?
Yep.
And this is what I recall you say. So every year they send him a bill demand, a demand for payment for the council tax. Every year he sends the trust documents all signed and witnessed and everything. And then every year they zero his balance. And then the next year they issue him a new demand and it doesn't build up. It's a new demand every year. Every year he does this again. Really?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they don't know what to do, basically, so they just use the system and they send out all these demands to everybody. So I get my demands and I ignore them. And
yeah, but how do they function? I mean, how many people are doing this? And
well, I'm trying to get a lot of people on board, and people are still a bit suspicious, but it's becoming quite popular. Yeah. I think we've got about 1,000 people so far signed up to these tax trusts. Yeah. But the second thing I wanted to talk about was specialist corporate trusts, people are, as you say, in America, they are having their money withheld by the company and passed on to the Revenue and Customs, or the IRS, I think it is over there. So what we need to do is to tell the company that they are breaking the law. Their directors are committing a serious criminal offense if they deduct money from your wages and then hand it to the IRS, or in this country, the Revenue and Customs. Now, that is a serious criminal offense for which they could be put in prison for 14 years under the Terrorism Act in this country, or 30 years under the International Criminal Court Act for conduct ancillary to genocide. Now, in America, you have a law which hardly any of your people know about called the Proxmire Act. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Proxmire Act.
No, I just pay my taxes and,
no, but this is the point. Because no one's heard about it, no one upholds it. Now, you had a great American senator called William Proxmire.
Right.
And every morning in Congress, let me go back one stage. In 1948, the world signed the Genocide Convention. And ever since then, a lot of countries have ratified it. And ratification means bringing it into your own law, domestic criminal law. Now, America didn't do that. They signed the convention, but they didn't ratify it by bringing it into American federal law. So Senator William Proxmire stood up in Congress every morning while he was there. And for 18 years, I think it was, he asked them to ratify the Genocide Convention. And finally, shortly before he retired, Reagan, the original Genocide Act was passed in 1948, the Genocide Convention. In 1988, Reagan signed the Convention for the genocide, against genocide. It's the Proxmire Act, it's called. Genocide Convention Implementation Act of 1988. So it is law in your country, and it applies to the president just as much as it applies to all the gang in the administration who are committing genocide all the time. by ordering the troops to massacre other people in other countries. And it applies right around the whole of America, and all you need to do is to start to uphold it. So we need some of your guys over there to say, right, we're going to bring a case against the poachers of the world, for instance, for genocide. And when they understand what it means to commit genocide, you might just have success, and that would stop everything.
Now,
Very interesting.
It
I'll have to run this by some of my friends.
it may be that for whatever reason, Steve, I don't know if I've mentioned this to you, right? So one is I'm Muslim, but for over 10 years I've attended Quaker meetings.
Yep.
That's the kind of Muslim that I am.
Right. They're just peace-loving people.
Just look, I'm up for a world where all human beings honor human beings.
Yes.
Because we're all God's children, all of us, right? We're all the same. We all bleed, we all fall in love, we all get hurt, we all die, right? We're on this one planet. So let's live together peacefully. So for me, this is no issue, right? Now, there may be people who think, okay, this war is justified and this war is justified, but they may be opposed to the climate change agenda. They may be opposed to the CBDCs. They may be opposed to other aspects of the Great Reset. They may not even just want to, they may like, I don't want to pay tax. I want to spend the money on something else. I want to buy Bitcoin or gold and silver because they can print the money anyway. They can print the currency. They don't need tax, but they can still use this as a vehicle for not paying tax and use it as a vehicle for preserving our liberty and for actually saying, no, you don't get to imprison us. You don't get to fit a smart meter on my property. And I'll use this as a vehicle to object to that. And it does take us spreading the word, letting lots and lots of people know, I am going to be doing this with my capital gains tax, and then see how it goes. And the worst thing that will happen is like, okay, well, I either go to prison or something if it ever goes to court or something and I lose, or I'll pay my tax. I can just always do that, right? If it gets really, really bad. But it clogs the system down. It slows everything down. It makes it more expensive for them. And then the people who have to enforce this mechanism, the bureaucrats, well, they're taxpayers too. And they don't want CBDCs and every single transaction being monitored. They may not want smart meters in their home. They might want to go and fly a few times and go and visit their family somewhere else or go on a holiday. So this is a really useful vehicle.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So, I'm all for defunding the government. Nothing good comes from big government. So, and government needs to have a lot less money. Wars are financed by, we just borrow money now to finance wars. That started with the U.S. Civil War. We just learned how to finance them. And it really got going big in the 20th century and 21st century. Nothing has changed. So,
I think the point about it is
taxation came about from funding wars.
Yes, exactly. The point about it is that it is a criminal offence, and most people don't understand that or understand how to apply it. Yeah. And so, it does more than slow things down, Rich. It actually brings a dead halt to it. And the point about it is that our MPs are committing criminal offences every year when they pass the act. What's it called? I forget what. There is an act saying you can have this money for defence for the armed forces. I mean, we're not supposed to have standing armed forces, by the way, in this country since 1688. We agreed we would never have standing armed forces.
Right.
But we have them. And so in order to get around that, they say, they're only there for 1 year. They're not standing. So they have to be paid. We have a special act of parliament to pay them every year.
Wow.
This is the way around the system that is just appalling. But the nice thing about it is that these MPs and our ministers and prime ministers and attorney generals are committing the worst crimes known to mankind, and we must start to hold them to account in court for those. Right. And so that's really the next step. Is not only do you sign the thing and say, right, there's no money coming to you, but now if you start committing these criminal offences, we have a legal duty to report you to the police and to start criminal proceedings against you. And that could be very powerful. We could just get one or two of our top leaders, Tony Blair or Jack Straw or...
Please, Tony Blair, please.
Yeah, I'd certainly like to see him. I've tried several times, but I think we're getting closer now. We have absolutely clear-cut evidence of him committing genocide. Very quickly, when he was Prime Minister, just before he handed over to Gordon Brown, he went on a tour around our troops and in Iraq. And he was talking to about 75 officers and men in the armed forces, and women, I think. And they were complaining about the deaths of and injuries to their colleagues and comrades, as well as complaining about the deaths and injuries to local people, men, women, and children, who they got to know when they're out there, And so he didn't know what to say. And he said, well, you're getting back out there after them. It's brilliant, actually. We're killing more of them than they are killing us. Now, that when he said that, I just couldn't believe it. Here he is. He'd been in power. He'd been waging war for 4 years by then, 2003, 2007. Yeah. He'd been waging war for 4 years, and he was still urging the troops to get out there and carry on killing. And that, it's unbelievable.
Yep.
He knows perfectly well it's a crime, but that's what he said. So that is the sort of thing we can bring up in court if we get more and more people saying we want our courts to uphold and enforce the law. Underpinning all of this is the issue that if taxpayers and leaders upheld the law, nation states would never wage war. None of us.
We would have to resolve things peacefully, which is a good point, Chris. This is how am I going to say this? So I don't hit kids. I don't hit my kids. Never hit my kids. They're 16 and 19 now. My 19-year-old is taller than me and stronger than me, so I blew it. I should have done it when he was smaller and shorter and weaker, right? But I never gave myself permission to do that. I don't hit my wife. I do not give myself permission to do that.
Yep.
She doesn't give herself permission to hit me. She's Christian, by the way, Steve, right? Scottish Christian. She would never, ever abuse me racially. Never. She doesn't give herself permission. And what we have to do as human beings is when there's upsets and disagreements, we got to stop giving ourselves permission to resolve it through violence and suppression of another.
Yep.
There may be issues that the three of us do not agree on. Well, okay, we can either talk or not talk. That's it. But it's only through talking anything will ever get resolved. But we give ourselves permission to kill others. This group gives itself permission to kill this group. This group gives itself permission to kill this group. No. Right, back to the trusts. I didn't know how to finish that, right?
Well, I sure would like to get a grip on the government.
Fair enough, right?
I would like the government to stop doing what it's doing.
Yeah, stop it. You're not serving us. We are sovereign. So there's this sovereignty declaration and the trust forms. And Chris his internet has frozen again. So he has links I'll link to his website, and it has more information. You can download the documents. Right now they're applicable for the United Kingdom. But Steve, with your lawyer training, feel free to adapt them for the United States, right?
I've never thought until this call. I never thought about any of this. and if you tried to, in the United States, if you tried to put your money in a trust and say, well, government, I'm not going to pay you until you comply with the law, you'd be in jail. Well, if you didn't pay, I mean, because that's how the government is. I mean, it's overbearing. There's no,
There's enough
if they let Chris get away with it, then they'd have to let everybody get away with it. So they would squash him like a bug.
They will get bad. Absolutely, they will get bad as more and more people do this. But I suppose the issue with the United States is that it's never had any tradition of engaging in tax revolt, ever.
No, we haven't. Well, we don't have a tradition of it. We have. We had tax revolts in the.
I know, Steve.
Century. What?
I know. I'm teasing you.
Yeah.
Boston Tea Party. Right? No. It came,
Yeah, no, we've had. There was a very strong. We don't like paying taxes.
Yeah. So it empowers that.
We just don't have a way around it.
Yeah, it empowers that sentiment. But even if it slows things down in the United States, right? even if it slows things down and makes it more expensive and bureaucratic, and then that movement gets stronger and stronger and louder and more powerful. So,
Well, if you could really use UN treaties and conventions to reduce taxes, you could probably get a lot of conservative support in America.
Yeah.
for the UN.
It's the ones
Quite ironic.
It's the ones that have been ratified
Yeah.
into domestic law. That's where the clout is.
Yes.
Well, I'll be interested in looking at Chris's stuff.
Yeah. So you download it, you sign the declaration, you fill in there's like 4 things on the trust form, and you don't have to open a bank account. You can put the whole money that is being asked of you, or 10% or 5% in consideration of that. You can put it in an envelope somewhere. The primary beneficiary is whoever's demanding the money of you. It could be the utility company. It could be, I don't know, local government or central government.
It's all of those.
Right. But I'm saying, whichever one you're dealing with at the time, right? And the secondary beneficiary is myself. So fulfill these conditions, which include proof that I'm not committing a criminal offense and that you're not committing a criminal offense. It has references to the statutes. This paragraph, this section. And then you can have the money if you do this by such and such a date. If you don't do it, then it goes to the second beneficiary. Hey ho, that's me.
Very good.
Yeah.
Can't
I
wait
think
to read
this
it.
is why I keep getting cut off. I'm sorry. I don't want anybody to know this.
Yeah. So we have to use informal means of communication. We have to bypass, the control mechanisms that they have. So we got to use censorship-resistant platforms. This will be on 3Speak, by the way, because they cannot. There's no organization behind it. It's fully decentralized. Nobody for them to go to, unlike Rumble or YouTube or even ODYSEE, which is hybrid. And then just spread the word. Spread the word. You've got nothing to lose. And the alternative of living a life where everything, we have no financial privacy. It's all on CBDCs, and they know everything that we're spending, and we can't travel further than 15 minutes. And we're having our local cultures destroyed by mass immigration, creating conflict and struggle for resources. And we're having the sexualization agenda that's rolling out via the World Health Organization in schools.
Yep.
And everything else that they're doing. Like, no, that's much, much worse. That's much worse than not doing this, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay.
All right.
Now, Chris, what you could do is perhaps modify a little bit, with the reference to, or anybody could do that, I suppose, with the Act of Union, which allows for free passage, but also the 1689 Bill of Rights, which says about preserving our properties. Government doesn't have a right over our properties, right? And no fine, fee, or conviction. No fine, fee, or forfeiture without conviction by a jury of our peers. That's in the Bill of Rights. So you can't fine me £15,000 because I don't let you into my house. Have a look at this, mate. Okay.
Yes. I just add one thing to that.
This is why we have guns. See, that would not happen.
Steve, I tell you, right? Lockdown, that whole thing, and the injection drive. Okay, I wish we had a Second Amendment. I mean, it's in the Bill of Rights.
Yeah,
it's in the Bill of Rights.
Well, see, we couldn't use guns for that, but if you're going to break down my house to give me a smart meter, you could use a gun there.
Yeah,
yeah.
I could use it against. You're not going to put some injection in me.
Yeah.
Can I just add one thing, Rich?
Many things.
It is important to remember that you've got to focus on the legal offence that is being committed all the time. So put in whatever conditions you like, providing there is a legal offence about transferring money from one person to another. Right. That is what is underpinning all of this. And it doesn't have to be just money. The nice thing is that the wording of the Act is money or other property. So even if they want to take your house or your car or anything else, or transfer weapons, for instance, from
right, or even what they're planning to do at some point, I think, is seize people's homes. They want to make it so expensive for people that they can't live in their own homes, and that we all have to live in pods in the city. Eating insects.
Bugs.
Yeah, which, by the way, aren't halal.
Oh dear.
All right.
Yeah, right.
Right. Steve.
Unfortunately, although it's humorous to talk like this, there's an awful lot of people suffering because of what's going on, and we really need to keep that in mind all the time. We've got to do something. We can't just talk about it. We've got to get into action.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, any last words for you?
No, I think this is very interesting. I'm glad that I met Chris. Chris, I'm looking forward to reading your documents, and I am all for getting a grip on government, which is just way out of control, doing too many things that people don't like.
Well, make sure I get your email, and I'll email you a whole supply across.
Okay, that'd be great.
I'll connect you guys by email, and I'll have all the links in the description below to Chris's website. What's it called?
It's probityco.com. That's probityco.com. probityco.com.
And also bit.ly/tax rebellion, where you can download the documents from my Telegram group. But there's way more information on Chris's website. And please share this video. Let people know. Spread the word. Steve, it's always wonderful and just so much fun to have you on. See,
well, yeah, thanks for inviting me. This is great. I learned so much.
Yes,
it's great to meet you.
Thank you to you, Chris. If you can hold on a second, because I've got another idea for you as well, right? And
I gotta go.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, bye-bye. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Share, comment, like, spread this word, and thank you so much. And keep filling your pockets with freedom and tax rebellion. Crypto Rich and Crypto Chris and Crypto Steve signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.